And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's make it 7 in 2020. But enough of me. I'm here for you on today's episode of the FB Show. We're going to continue with our Week 4 game recaps, breaking down every single Week 4 matchup, all through the lens of fantasy football. Up next, the Arizona Cardinals versus the Carolina Panthers. If you're excited for this game recap, be sure to hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield. Also smash the subscribe button like a power running back up the middle so you never miss a video from me. And last but not least, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture, primarily Twitter, because that's where I love to have the interactions, the questions, the debates all around fantasy football. So be sure to hit me up there. And without further ado, let's dive right in between the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. The Panthers improved to 2-2 on the year by defeating the Cardinals by a final score of 31-21, dropping the Cardinals to 2-2 after starting the season out 2-0. Kyler Murray played fine this game, all things considered. 31 attempts, 24 completions for 133 yards, 78 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. Kenyan Drake, big story here, and we're going to talk a lot about him in this video. 13 carries, 35 yards against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. DeAndre Hopkins, 9 targets, 7 receptions for 41 yards. Didn't manage to find his way into the end zone. Also going back to Kenyan Drake, he had 0 targets in the past game, speaking of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. On the other side, with the Panthers, Bridgewater, welcome Teddy to Fantasy 2020. 37 attempts, 26 completions, 276 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown in there too. Mike Davis continued his trek to become CMC light. 16 carries, 5 receptions, 6 targets, 111 total yards, and a touchdown. And Robby Anderson continues to trug along. 8 receptions, 11 targets, and 99 yards. DJ Moore had 6 targets for 4 receptions and 49 yards. Not a whole lot of things to talk about here in terms of a box score, right? But there are a lot of fantasy relevant questions that we need to figure out what we're doing, just situations, right? We're going to talk about Kenyan Drake. We're going to talk about DJ Moore and what you should do with those 2 players. But we have to start off with Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals offense as a whole, right? This is now 2 straight games where they've lost. And I also feel like it's been 2 straight games now where they haven't done the things that they were setting out to do, if that makes sense, right? Especially watching this game. There was no deep shots downfield. There was no play action rollouts to get Kyler Murray in space and either throw it deep or run up the side, right? They just were a very vanilla offense this game, I felt like. And that's one of the things where, like, Kingsbury was brought in to revolutionize this team. And especially, like, hey, he hand-selected Kyler to be part of that. And for whatever reason, they just haven't done that this game. And even, I feel like going back to last week, too, it was kind of very similar as well. So we have to start there, right? Because the fact that Kyler Murray has DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Chase Edmunds, and Kenyan Drake on this team, and can only throw for 133 passing yards against a bad Carolina Panthers defense, that makes no sense to me. Maybe it's because, they traveled across the country for this game and it was a tough away game, but even still, that's just one of those things that doesn't add up to me. Yes, Kyler played well and he finished well. He scored 21.5 fantasy points. Like, that's going to be great for you. But it was a weird 21 fantasy points, if that makes sense. I feel like that's the right word to describe it, right? The Cardinals were favored by 3 in this game, and I'm shocked. Like, it's one thing to lose. It's also one thing to lose by double digits against this Panthers team, when the Cardinals offense is so much greater than not only the Panthers offense, but the Panthers defense as well. This game, it was just a weird game from Arizona, all things considered. You want to talk about weird, though, from Arizona. We have to talk about Kenyan Drake. And this is really the big story here. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Arizona wide receivers. If you have Christian Kirk, you keep him. If you have DeAndre Hopkins, you're fine. Just a bad game. No reason to panic. But we need to talk about Kenyan Drake and Chase Edmunds. I'm not worried about Chase Edmunds, per se. I'm not worried about Kenyan Drake either, it's just something that we need to figure out what the fuck is happening. So Kenyan Drake, as I talked about, going into this week, Drake is top 5 in carries, right? 16, 20, 18, and then 13 in this game versus Carolina. He's also on the field for 65% of the snaps. 70, 64, 68, 63. So you're looking at consistently 65% of snaps. Kenyan Drake is on the field. Can I pull up last year as well? Is it going to let me do... Can I go... There we go. I got last year's numbers here as well. When you look at Drake, Drake last year for Arizona, 84, 64, 76, 80, 65, 74, 81, 96. So yes, the numbers have dipped just a little bit, but he's still getting the same volume as far as the rush attempts go. The big difference here actually is the receiving work. And this is, I think, is where the biggest issues lie, and I don't know what to do about it, admittedly. I don't know how to process it just yet, okay? So going back last year and looking at his numbers with the Cardinals, okay? I'm going to read these off to you. 4 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, 5, 3, 1, 4, 4. And he was pretty much hauling in 4 targets every single game with those. So he was getting the opportunity to do work through the air. But then we look at this year. 2 targets, 1 targets, and as I mentioned, 0 targets in this game. And I guess I'm just a bit confused by this, right? It doesn't make any sense. We saw the success that the Cardinals had last year, giving the ball to Drake in space and utilizing him as that guy who can do both, that 3-down running back who has the ability to do work through the ground and through the air. It was one of the reasons why they traded David Johnson, because they had a guy in Kenyan Drake who can do everything that David Johnson was doing, but better. And I don't know. Like, I acquired Kenyan Drake this week because this matchup versus Carolina was incredible, right? I've talked about this before. Carolina's run defense is abysmal. Their next set of games to round out their bye week at week 8 is the Jets, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks. So that, again, he literally had, even all season long though, that's the thing, right? Even going back to week 2 versus Washington, it was Washington, Detroit, Carolina, and then we get into that stretch that I just mentioned. He literally has 6 straight. He would have 6 straight plus matchups, and he just hasn't done anything yet. And I guess he will have 6 straight plus matchups. He's had 3 of them, and he hasn't done anything. I'm just confused. I'm admittedly just confused. Personally, because I also know what the schedule looks like down the stretch as well, and just kind of read that off to you. After their bye week, it's Miami, and then Seattle again. New England and Buffalo are thrown in there, but then they have the Rams, and then the Giants, and the Eagles. So, the schedule is still really, really solid for Kenyan Drake. But if you aren't getting the receiving work, then what is Kenyan Drake, right? Because that's just one of the things that made him so valuable last year. So just going through, I'm not worried about Chase Edmunds per se, but I think that's one of the things that we actually have to talk about, right? So I know I'm shifting my chair this way, but you guys are going to have to deal with that. With Chase Edmunds, this is now twice in 4 games where he has caught a receiving touchdown. He's had targets of 5, 4, 2, and 6. He is seeing more work out of the backfield, or out of the backfield in terms of the receiving work than Kenyan Drake is. But what's the point of paying Kenyan Drake $10 million this year, giving him that transition tag, if you weren't going to fully utilize him, right? So for me, I guess this is where it leaves me. I should also note that Kenyan Drake was a bit hobbled. He got popped in the chest today, and he did leave the game. I think he'll be okay. I'm not expecting too much concern for that injury. Here is where I land with Kenyan Drake, speaking as somebody who just acquired him. I'm not going to hit the panic button yet, because I still see the way for him to be productive, right? Like I said, he is still getting 85% of the rushing attack from the Cardinals, right? It's just the receiving work that is just really bizarre. I'm not gonna hit the panic button yet. If he can't break it off versus the Jets, that's when I'll probably start to hit that panic button, right? Carolina, sure, you're on the road, you're traveling cross country. This game was, like I said, was just really awkward for the Cardinals in general. Fine, maybe I'll give you the pass there. But if you can't break through against the Jets, that's when we'll start to have some actual conversation. So give me one more week with Kenyan Drake, and then we'll evaluate where we're at from there. I do understand why people are frustrated, though, if you drafted Kenyan Drake, because he was somebody who I was also expecting to be much better than he has been during the early portion of the 2020 fantasy season. And we're going to stick along that same vein as we shift gears here to talk about the Panthers and DJ Moore. Oh, boy. Robby Anderson, I talked about this in today's live stream before the kickoff. I knew Robby Anderson was going to be relevant for the Panthers this season, and that was strictly because him and Teddy, they were working out all offseason long together once they both signed with Carolina. So I knew that Anderson would have the advantage in terms of chemistry goes, but I didn't think it would be like this per se. Robby Anderson has seen double-digit targets in 2 out of 4 games. He has seen 8+ targets in 3 out of 4. Whereas DJ Moore, on the other hand, has seen 9+ targets in 2 games, but then 6 and below in 2. I think the big thing here, honestly, and this might just be the DJ Moore experience, is DJ Moore isn't a touchdown guy. And maybe that's a conversation that we actually have to start considering. His rookie season, he only had 2, and he was a fine player during his rookie year. We saw like he posted games of 90 receiving yards, consistently was getting 8 targets, hauling in 5 receptions. Like we saw that during his rookie year, and then we saw in year with Kyle Allen, right, where it was along the same lines. You only found the end zone 4 times. One game was a 2-touchdown game. So in fact, he only scored in 3 games in total, if you want to look at it that way. But he was still getting double-digit targets, hauling in 8 receptions, and getting 90+ receiving yards. And then we move over into this year, and he still hasn't found the end zone. He's getting 65 receiving yards a game, and he's getting 7 to 8 targets a game, hauling in 6 of them, whatever the case is. Is DJ Moore, and this is the comp I'm going to use because I think it kind of makes sense, is DJ Moore Jarvis Landry? And I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. Jarvis Landry is a guy who, for example, this year, and I actually want to look this up. Let's see here. So we're going to take note of this. See, that's interesting to me. Like, that doesn't... Is it just because of that one game? I think it's probably just because of that one game. But you look at Jarvis Landry's numbers and DJ Moore's numbers comparatively, and they're the exact same, pretty much, outside of the fact that DJ Moore had a 120-yard receiving game in week 2. But I want to see how many touchdowns, like, even still, like, Jarvis finds his way into the end zone, right? Jarvis had 4. Jarvis had 5 games with touchdowns last year. In 2018, he had 4. In 2017, he had, that's the thing, he just finds the end zone more. Like, Jarvis is just naturally, I'm not going to call him a better wide receiver, but Jarvis still finds a way to get into the end zone. And maybe that's just not what DJ Moore is designed to do. I'm not going to panic about DJ Moore. I'm not, because I do believe in the talent, and I think DJ Moore is a great PPR guy, like, just inherently, because of the fact that he is just going to get targeted 8 times a game, and he is going to do work with those targets, but maybe not put it into the end zone. It's just bizarre. So what do you do with DJ Moore, I think, is the question, right? Because so far, Robby Anderson has been by far and away the better wide receiver here for the Panthers during the early parts of the season. If you feel like you have to sell DJ Moore, I'm not going to punish you for it. I'm not going to rip you apart. But I'm also going to say the same thing that I just talked about with Kenyan Drake, is just see it out, right? Sometimes you have to see it out. Here is something that's very, what's the right word? here's something that's very positive, I guess, about DJ Moore. Next week he plays Atlanta. Here's what I mean by that. If you want to sell DJ Moore, fine. Sell DJ Moore after the Atlanta game. Or at least see how you feel after the Atlanta game. Because if we've learned one thing about the Falcons defense during the course of the first 3 weeks, soon to be 4 weeks when they face Aaron Rodgers on Monday night, it is that defense is absolute garbage. So if you want to sell DJ Moore, you sell him after he has his good game. Okay? Get the most value for him. And then you can make that decision about whether you want to sell him or keep him or whatever the case is. Just that's when you can field the best offers for him. If you want to get off him, I understand. He has not been what I and many other people expected him to be. I believe I had DJ Moore ranked as my wide receiver 15 entering the season. And I still think the logic made sense for it, right? Like Bridgewater throwing those short intermediate throws. And that was going to equate to targets and great yardage for DJ Moore. But the question really became about the touchdowns, and those just haven't come yet. And that was the thing that we were that was the thing that we were all expecting to happen this season, and it just hasn't yet. I know me personally, I'm still going to try and acquire DJ Moore. I'm still a believer in the talent and the way that this team is going to have to win games. I'm still willing to roll the dice on him. If I were a DJ Moore owner, I would be still willing to roll the dice on him. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? Teddy balled out. I'll say that. And I really think the big thing with Teddy was that he finally scored multiple touchdowns. Right, the thing holding him back this whole time has been the fact that the lack of touchdowns. 1 touchdown in week 1, 0 in week 2. And then week 3, he had 1. And here we go, week 4, where he has 3. And that is such a game-breaking thing for the quarterback. It's very, very simple, right? Every quarterback is going to throw for 250 yards. Every quarterback is going to throw for 300 yards. The question is, can you put the ball into the end zone in order to get those additional 4 or 6 points for your team? And the answer for the first 3 weeks was no. And then finally he broke through this week with 3. So I do love to see that. There was also a rushing touchdown in there, which makes me even happier. Bridgewater played really, really well in this game, and I was really impressed by that. And that was the Bridgewater that I was hoping to see all season long. Because the way that this defense is unfortunately structured and the way that it's the current landscape of said defense, they have to put points on the board if they want to be successful this season. Mike Davis, don't need to say much about him. For the second straight week, he's gotten it done as your CMC replacement. Robby Anderson, don't need to say much about him. He is your number one wide receiver in Carolina. And I think that's really it. This Panthers are pretty cut and dry for me right now. The biggest question really is, what do you do with DJ Moore? And just to recap one more time, because I do think my answer was a bit on the fence. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a bit of a more clear-cut answer for what you do with DJ Moore. I want to keep DJ Moore, just me personally. I want to keep DJ Moore. But if you are inclined to sell him, you sell him after next week's game versus Atlanta. I understand why you want to sell him. I do. But if you're going to sell him when his value is the highest, and that's going to be after he plays that Swiss cheese defense in Atlanta. So I think that's going to do it for my Carolina Panthers and Arizona Cardinals game recap. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like down below. Thank you so much for watching. You can also subscribe so you don't miss a video from me. Last but not least, follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my video. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.